Okay, Jess, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Jess Carson. I'm a writer, director living in LA. Um, what else do I say? Is that it?
Well, yeah, there's so much more.
I don't know what to say. I'm so bad at this. Um, I am right. I'm a writer on The Flash.
Oh, right.
I'm a writer on The Flash. Have a feature film in development at Broken Road Productions. And yeah, I love what I do.
Well, my dogs do too. Okay, great. Okay, so let's get started with some of these questions just to get the juices flowing. And everyone pop into Q&A. And I'm going to mute myself so that when my dogs randomly scream at things, it's not effective. Okay, great. So when did you get started writing or creating stories?
When I was very young, I'm diagnosed with ADD, and I had a lot of excess energy as a kid. And I actually my parents really kind of pushed me into it. I got into trouble once. I don't remember what I did. I really don't. But I was supposed to write my parents like an apology letter, and I was really bad. So I wrote like some story about a princess who was like stuck with her evil parents, and like a dumbass gave it to my parents, and they thought it was hilarious, and they really starting to like push me into the creative things, and they saw that like, oh, she's definitely weird, so let's put her in weird creative things. So
I love that. She's weird, so let's do that. So talk a little about screenwriting. When did you first start screenwriting? And like when did you just dabble, and when did you like
yeah, let's see. So I initially actually went to college for music composition. I was actually in college for music for about 3 years, and then ended up switching colleges and moved closer to home and changed to creative writing, but initially it was fiction. Um, and just one day I'd met some friends. My local film community in Little Rock was not too bad. It wasn't the best, but it was very tight knit. And I had a couple friends, they like had one of my short stories, and they're like, hey, this would be a really cool short film. And I was like, great, I don't know how to do that. But I just wrote it, wrote a little short film off this short story, and we filmed it. And I really just kind of fell in love with it from there. Yeah. So that was probably about, I don't know, that was about a decade ago. Yeah.
So the next question I'm going to vary since we sort of answered it, but like what was it about the screenwriting that you fell in love with? Was it the creative process? Was it seeing it come to life? Because obviously as a writer, not everything you write comes to life. You get, hopefully it does, but not everything does.
Yeah, it was a whole creative process, because I kind of was like trying to learn on my own. So that was actually pretty interesting to do. Obviously, that film cannot be found anywhere online because it's horrid. But it really was like the whole process of it, from writing the script to doing like the casting and like, filming it and being on a set and kind of realizing and learning as I went along how that worked. I fell in love with the whole process.
I love that. So we talked about that script. I want to talk about like, this is your first script is the question, but I want to talk about the first script that you were like, I'm a writer writing a script. Yeah. Like your first, the first one that you thought was good. Let's talk about like, what did you think at the time? What do you think about it now? Like, what was that process like? Do you ever talk about that script?
I still don't think I've written one of those. I'm my own worst critic. So I'm like, I don't know if I've written one of those. No. I mean, honestly, I would probably say that script. I think because it did feel so different moving from, fiction. Again, I went to college like for fiction writing. And so it felt so different moving from that medium to kind of a shorter form medium. And like, once I kind of felt like, oh, I read through it. Oh, I have a story here. Ha, I'm an expert. Like, no, but it really, I was like, this feels really amazing and really great. I mean, again, like, looking back on it, I joke about it all the time. It's like, that film is horrible. It is what it is. But I mean, honestly, to tell you the truth, like, it's never nothing when you've like actually done something, whether or not it's been seen, whether or not it's just a good self-fulfillment, and you really feel like inside that, you really have accomplished something, and it makes you feel good. And people respond to it, even if it's just one person who responds to it, and even if that one person's your mom, like, it feels great. So I would say I'm actually, I'm proud of that, just for it being kind of the catalyst, if that makes sense. Yeah.
For those of you taking notes at home, great quote. It's never nothing when you've done something. Jess Carson. That's so true. It's so great. I love that. So will you talk a little bit about, I want to talk about the transition from fiction writing to learning the rules of screenwriting? I mean, like, how did you, a lot of people learn on the go, on the job, if you will. It seems to be evolving. Will you just talk about your process with sort of acclimating to that and understanding action lines aren't novels, etc.?
Yeah, after I did that first one, I started buying a lot of books. And then I started like finding the places where you like download a lot of scripts. Cause just like with filmmaking, like whatever, like I kind of study watching movies or blah, blah, blah. So I was trying to find scripts and really kind of seeing, you know, what are the common through lines in these scripts, and then coupled with whatever I was reading in these books. And then I ended up going to Full Sail for like a master's in screenwriting, and like kind of learning things, you know, whatever I learned there was pretty great, in terms of like the set rules and like, but what reading scripts and watching movies actually helped me learn is like, where does that line, like where is that line able to be crossed? And then the transitioning and learning that's not actually a line that needs to be crossed. It's taking a rule book and taking the things that you know and learn, and you're making it your own, right? So I think that's kind of the transition. It was a lot of just like reading and studying and seeing what worked and trying to figure out what doesn't work. I was even trying to find scripts to like films that were like rated like, I don't know, 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, okay, why is this rated so bad versus like, you know, a film that's rated like 100%, like why is this so good? Just a lot of reading and a lot of studying, which I still do. I mean, that's still, you know, something that's really important, I think. So I make it a habit of doing that.
Oh, what a good idea to do the good and the bad. Do you also watch the scripts? Like, do you watch the movie after reading the script?
Yeah. I have a folder on my computer that has just scripts and like that of movies I have, which I do have. Like I have something like 400. How many are that? 400 like 20 movies or something over here. And when I like sometimes when I am trying to like hone in on, you know, let's say I'm writing a sci-fi, right? I'm like trying to watch a good sci-fi in the same vein of what I'm writing, and I have the script up as the film's going to kind of see, because, you know, obviously when production happens and before production happens even, there's so many changes that happen, and seeing like, okay, why does this change? Why did this change maybe happen? Like, is it because it was just too dialogue? Like, and trying to figure those things out ahead of time so that like I can do because you can, it's always subjective, right? It's always gonna be like one person read your script in the studio. So, but it does kind of help you start to get an idea of like, okay, like this was probably a change because it just makes more sense if you're thinking about actual production. Not in terms of like writing, you know, stage directions and stuff in, because don't do that. But just kind of like, you know, what are the elements that really make things shine and pop when it gets to screen, and see if I can like apply it proactively rather than retroactively.
I love that. What I love most about that, for those of you listening at home, is you can do that at home. There are so many accesses to great screenplays and pilots and stuff. So if you're ever like, what can I do? Whatever. You can do that. Do it just as described. It's amazing. And I love that you continue doing that. So speaking of learning lessons, learning things, what was the hardest lesson you learned as you kept writing?
That 99% of what you're going to hear is no. That's the hardest lesson. Honestly, it really is, because, and I think it all comes down to like a mind shift change, really. Because in the grand scheme of things, hearing a lot of no's really does suck, especially if you're a gentle flower like me and need affirmation in your life. It's really hard when someone tells you no, or I pass. But the thing to note is like, you know, again, like I think I've said this a few times, like to people back home and stuff, is back home in Arkansas, is that all you need is one yes. So that's kind of the mind shift change. But I would say that was the hardest lesson learned at the beginning, is that just because someone says no, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with, you know, a lot of times doesn't really have to do with if your writing's bad, or if it does have to do with if there's something that they didn't click with in your screenplay, like, you know, don't take it personally, just figure out why, make it better. I mean, all of these things are good for improving your own writing. And I think all that, you know, all that feedback is critical in you really being able to turn out a really good project.
Me approving. So what made you decide to take the leap and pursue screenwriting specifically as a career? Because it is a leap.
Yeah, I mentioned a second ago, I'm from Arkansas, born and raised in Arkansas. And I started, you know, again around 22 maybe, around when I was 22-ish. really starting to kind of dabble into that. And, I did it for, I don't know, 5-6 years. I did like 4 films in Arkansas, and, a couple like really local, like, film festivals and things, but I just fell more and more in love with it as it went along. And there just ended up being, kind of I'm a very logical person. So it just ended up being kind of a sit down and think about this. If you really want to do this, what do you have to do? And that was just a logical answer. It's like, you have to go, as a writer, you have to go where it is. So, it really was, it was like a light switch of like, all right, decision's made, where are you going to go? Like, it was scary. It still is scary. And I'm in it now, and I'm petrified all the time, but I'm also really emotional. So there's that.
Gentle flower. You gentle flower, as you described yourself. Jess Carson, gentle flower. So on that note, do you have any advice for people who don't live in LA or New York, in terms of making the leap, or in terms of the changing landscape, all that jazz?
I mean, honestly, to be super transparent, as a writer, you do have to make a leap at some point. It's really hard to get in the room, because at the same time, especially when you're a writer, especially when you're doing TV, here's the thing, TV, you have to be here. Like you got to be in LA. I mean, 99% of the rooms are here. But for film, the thing about it is, I feel like, at least with the producers I've come into contact with, it's extremely collaborative, and they want to like who they're working with. They want to be around who they're working with. And if you're not physically here, that makes it harder. I'm not saying it's impossible, but things, as good as things were going, I had the off-Broadway musical and stuff when I was in New York, and things really didn't start to hit until I moved to Los Angeles. So there does have to be a shift at some point in your own mindset of like, do I want to step out and take that leap and bound? It's not easy. It's really hard. But, if this is something you really want to do, really passionate about, it's 100% worth it.
Speaking of meetings, let's talk about meetings. Let's talk about, coming to LA before you moved here and doing some meetings online. Do you have lessons from not only your digital meetings, as we'll call them, but also like physical meetings, just thoughts and lessons on meeting taking?
Yeah. Doing? For digital meetings, for online meetings, definitely like be as you absolutely can. Because again, like if you're not here, you have to still like, that person still needs to want to work with you. They want to, like, even if you're the type of person who's like, man, if I can land something, then I can move to LA. Well, okay, you still need to make that person like you. You still need to make that, because half of it is your work, half of it is you. And so you just need to like, just be as you possibly can. And if you're not passionate about talking about your project doesn't mean anything to you, it's not gonna mean anything to anybody who you're talking to. So really kind of own that and own you. And this, I mean, this goes both ways. It goes with online, it goes with in person. And then the other thing is, you have to think about yourself as a business, in terms of like, know your brand, right? Like know who you are, know what kind of writer you are. It doesn't mean you have to be like, I only write cartoons, like, or I only write this. Like, you don't have to be that, but you have, like, for example, me, I'm like, I write stories about badass women, and or I write stories about badass women of color who weren't slaves, or, I like, so it's like that, have those things about you that make you you. Because at the same time, you think about it, you get a project picked up, you're talking to a producer, you have a producer who needs to go sell you to a studio. They need to have something to sell. You are a product at that point. In the nicest terms, you are a product. You are just a vessel. But you need to know who you are, know what your brand is, and if you have that sure sense of self, you have that sure sense of what how your project fits into that, and then you really don't hold back on who you are, and you don't try to be or say what you think they want you to say. Just be you. That really makes all the difference.
Great. Also, just so you know, sometimes when we move forward, a halo, the lighting is so great that it's do you see that a halo? No, it's amazing.
Windows, I get really washed out unless I'm
no, it's perfect. No, it's not. It's amazing. It's like when you're like, be you, there's a halo, and it's like it really helps it to land. Yeah. These are so fun. Okay, so let's talk for a second about perfectionism and getting your writing out there. It can be hard. Sometimes you feel like it's never done. And in many ways, it is never done until, it's streaming or up somewhere. So have you struggled with that? And what advice would you give people who
Jesus Christ, that's like my biggest issue. My manager just laughed back there because I have a huge problem. I am a perfectionist. Like literally in the dictionary, my face is next to that word. I am my own worst critic. I am a huge perfectionist. And that's something I've had to, here's the thing, you can still be a perfectionist. You just need to know when you can kind of put it out there. And that's easier said than done because I, again, still have a problem with it. Like even the feature I have out now, like if I could literally, I am still making changes. There are changes. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, we're going to send it to this actress. Send this version, you know? Nothing's ever locked, and that's kind of the good thing. Things get better with time, you know, whatever. Just don't put too much pressure on yourself because nothing will ever see the light of day that way. Have a good support system. I've now even gotten to the habit of sending my vomit drafts to my manager, even though I know they're just not. But 9 times out of 10, I'll send it and he'll send things back. And it's like, you know, 10% of the notes I thought I was going to get. And it's like, oh, whoops. But you know what I mean? Like, so just, you can be a perfectionist. There's nothing wrong with being a perfectionist. But I would say if you were as rabid of a perfectionist as me, the best thing you could have is someone who you trust and someone who you know will be honest with you to read your stuff. And at any stage and to give you notes at any stage, because not only does it help you kind of realize that 100% of the time you're going to be further along than you think. Having that outside perspective when you really have boiled hours and hours and hours upon a script, having a fresh set of eyes that's away from the script and departed from the script really does help you see other things that maybe you didn't see before.
I love that. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm like, Danielle, I have one sentence. You're gonna love it.
How is this?
And then I'm like, and I don't really love it. I'm just trying to pretend like I love it. No, but that's great. I think that's super helpful. And I think it's helpful too, for people to know that like, this is a collaborative business and it really does, like, everything changes. So you do the best you can, you put it out there and then you recognize it's going to change. It's going to shift depending on who's looking at it, what actress is looking at it or whatever. I think that's great. Okay, so we have a few questions in the Q&A. Keep them coming, guys, because I will keep Jess here like the whole time asking my own questions. So ask questions, people. Okay, Nicole asks, how do you find inspiration and what is your writing schedule like?
Schedule. No. Yes, what do I find? It really depends. I mean, a lot of times I start with an issue because again, like, that's a big staple of mine is if it's a sci-fi, if it's a historical fiction or whatever, it always starts with some kind of social undertone that's throughout, you know, or it starts with some kind of theme that's throughout. I usually start with theme if there's like a theme, like a big theme, not like good versus evil, but actually something more specific than that. Like, you know, can't think of the name off the top of my head because it's Sunday. I start with that and I try to dwindle down. But honestly, others in the spectrum, I write a little bit of, I've dabbled in some historical stuff. Like I have a pirate script right now that's out. And that honestly was a mixed female pirate that literally existed and that there's nothing about. And I really started with that research, right? But on the other hand, with the sci-fi, a lot of times it's like, you know, socio-political, or it's like, you know, something under that I start with and I build around it. Writing schedule. Whenever I can. No, because of the ADD, again, like I literally kind of clock myself in. I don't keep a strict schedule from day to day because nobody can stick to that. But if I know like, okay, tomorrow, I know, you know, I have to do this, you know, my day job, you know, whatever job from this time to this time. Okay, I'm literally going to start writing. I want to write for 3 hours on Monday. These are the hours I'm going to write. And I literally have a clock in and clock out on my phone, basically. So I specifically have to do that. You don't have to do that, but I am ridiculous about scheduling things.
I love that. Do you have an app? What app do you use?
Oh, I just use my alarm.
Oh, you use your alarm.
Okay. Yeah, and I like label my alarm, clock in, clock out.
Nice, fun. Yeah, I haven't spent $100 on apps for that. That haven't worked. Was not that reason. That's super. I should have just thought about using my phone. Yep. Okay. Never mind. Okay. Eric has a question about fellowships. Have you ever applied to fellowships? If so, what was your experience? And do you think they're worth it or necessary?
I have not. I wanted to go a different direction, and I wanted to try to just hit it directly. But that's not to say there's no right way to break into this industry. So I think they're great. I think, when you make it in, like getting fellowships, that's a great way to meet people. This is a relationship business. So if you feel the need to apply for a fellowship, by all means, I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
I was writing a question down. You caught me. Okay. Joseph has a question. What was the hardest part of getting someone to look at your writing?
Finding them. Yeah, that's kind of the hardest part, is literally just figuring out who those people are. I'm very lucky to have probably the best reps in the business. I will fight anyone about it. I'm just saying, they definitely are very open to things, and they help me get in any rooms. Getting into the room is the hardest thing, again, because it all comes down to if they like you, and if they, usually your sample is what gets you in the room anyway. So yeah, it's just hard, like just getting in touch and figuring out who to talk to, and all of that's a lot. It's just a lot when all I want to do is write.
You mentioned a little bit about this, but I'd love for you to be specific about the question is, what books and classes have you taken? I know you mentioned that you did learn screenwriting, and then you read a bunch of books. Do you have some that really stand out? Do you have any you go back to?
Yeah, I mean, they're all under there that I could try to find them. There's I mean, I have Save the Cat. I don't really use it as much. I have one's called Bullies, Bastards, and something, but it's a book about how to write good villains. I can't remember what it's called. I'll figure it out. Bitches, bullies, and something. There's a lot of curse words in it. There's one that's called the Production Bible from A to Z or something like that. I'll just send you a list once I go look under my bookcase over here. I have a lot of them.
I love it. Then when we send out the recording, Alex can send the list. Recommended reading.
Yes.
I love it. This is from Dawn. Hey, Jess, how long did you work with Roadmap? And what would be the biggest lesson they taught you on your journey? That's from Dawn, not me. Good question, Dawn. I love it. I love that question.
Oh, Brianna. A few years. I think the biggest lesson from that is people are out there and people are looking. So just keep pushing. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, Stafford has a question. It's been told that writers should find one specific genre and stick with it. Do you feel a writer should be able to tell whatever story is on their heart to tell?
Yes, I do. I personally do. I don't stick to one genre. I stick to only two genres, but I think it's more about what are you trying to say, that transcends genre. And I think if you have something to say and you have a specific voice when you are telling your stories, it doesn't matter how many genres you write in, if someone can pick up a script and know this is your script. So I think it's more about your voice and knowing what your voice is rather than if you sit in one lane or not, because we're writers. Like our imaginations are bigger than the universe. We're not supposed to sit in one lane. So that's my opinion on it.
I love it. I love that you said our imaginations are bigger than the universe. I like compliments. I took that as a direct compliment. That was just meant to.
No,
I love it. I think that's great. And I think actually that answers, like earlier when you talked about your brand and how, you're pitched and sold, you didn't mention genre. You mentioned a couple things you write in.
Yeah.
Specifically said, badass women of color who were not, like you have a very big voice. And I think that's so important in terms of brand because it supersedes the genre in my opinion.
Yeah, it always does. Just have something to say. That's the big thing.
Do you, so that was the question I was writing down earlier that I'm going to get to now, even though there's more questions, keep them coming without time. But have you noticed that shifts at all? Like throughout your career, have you shifted that brand? And how do you sort of discover that? Do you discover it after the fact? Like when you write something new, or are you like, I want to try this?
I honestly feel like, and I think Keegan can either vouch with a loud yes, but I really feel like it's gotten even more like solid in that brand. Yes. Moving on, and it moves on as I kind of feel like I become a better writer, but it also moves on as you do kind of feel like you have more to say, and because again, all of these meetings, you know, especially when the meetings when the exec, even if it's a general and they're really, you know, great about feedback and stuff, you learn so much about like things that you are missing in your own like toolbox, that I feel like it just kind of bolsters who you already are. So I would actually say it hasn't shifted. It's just gotten even stronger in that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Joseph's question is, since you write on the Flash, were you familiar with the comic or did you have to do research?
Yeah, so, okay, I'll say two things about that. Yes, I actually am a huge DC person. I love comics. When I was little, my parents were like, oh no, she's a tomboy. Oh, Wonder Woman, that's a woman. And, you know, DC Comics, right? So I really got into Superman, you know, Batman, The Flash, like, you know, Booster Gold, like all of that. So for me, and then when the show started, I was, you know, ecstatic. So for me, yes, I absolutely kind of had the background. But the other thing I will say is that the room is like half and half. Like some people are like super into comics and everything. The other half don't know anything about comics because you don't have to. Like at the end of the day, we're trying to tell a good story, right? So you know how to tell a good story. The rest will come. Research you can do anytime.
That's great. Erica has another question. Can you share your experience of getting repped with Echo Lake? Was it a pitcher roundtable? How many scripts did they read?
Yeah, I met him. It was like just a coffee meeting. General, actually before he was a manager, way before he was a manager. It was just kind of just to get to know. And yeah, it was just a one-on-one coffee, one of my trips out to LA. So I actually met him in person. And we just continued to work together over the years, and you know, he got promoted, and you know, we had kind of made an agreement to, you know, that I would kind of stick around, not really seek other representation, let him kind of hip pocket me, and he, you know, stuck to his word because that's my guy.
I love that he's in the background of all these questions.
He's totally back there.
So what's the least favorite thing about your manager, and like what would you never want him to know? No, I'm just
I would never want him
to
He's like, I'm gonna go now.
Okay, Chantel has a question. Hi, I'm still new in terms of the industry, but as I've been writing, I find myself telling my story even though I'm trying not to do that. How do you not write about your life, or is it okay to add parts of yourself in every project?
Yeah, you should. I mean, it sounds like that's like part of your brand, like, you know, pieces of you. I would absolutely say there are a lot of things, because I know there's so many times that like, because you gotta remember when you're writing, especially when it comes down to characters, you know, the best movies that you watch, hands down, are the ones that have people in it you care about, you know, people in there you can relate to. So yeah, I think there should absolutely always be a piece of yourself in everything you do, because that does nothing but enhance and make more real, you know, these characters and these stories that you're actually telling. So I think it's okay, you know. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Kim's question, how far along in your career were you before you signed with your reps? What kind of portfolio did you have before landing them?
Yeah, I probably have been going at it for, has it been 2 or 3 years? 3 years? Okay, so I've been going at it for about 7 years. And I had a quite large portfolio. I gotta send him everything. I had probably, I think 3 or 4, like maybe 2 pilots and maybe 2 features. And then I had a bunch of stuff that I was working on that we had talked through as well. So I had about 4 projects completed. One was probably like halfway done. Had a really large portfolio. I think that's important because it shows that you're serious. You're not just a one and done. You're in this to win it, and you can produce content. That's the big thing. It's like you gotta produce. So yeah.
Along those lines, I'm actually curious, you talked about your off-Broadway experience. Mm-hmm. Has any of your playwriting or play experience, like how much has that played into your specifically LA-oriented screenwriting experience? Screenwriting, which is funny because it should be Broadway, like they're much more hoity-toity. But yeah, will you talk about that?
Yeah. Actually, it translated a lot. I started in theater in Little Rock. I was a community theater even before I like change to creative writing in college. Like I was a theater person. I've always been a theater person since like middle school. So for me, that's actually been, that's such a special kind of storytelling and such a, cause you gotta, yeah, I mean, this is a medium where you are literally giving someone's journey from beginning to end in one sitting, you know? And so it actually helps a lot. It has definitely helped in episodic, just because you're able to tell a very, you know, full story in an extremely succinct amount of time. And then with the off-Broadway musical itself, it was kind of a merger of the two, right? Because I was already kind of trying to break into, you know, film and TV at that point, had a theater background, you know, as well, had the fiction background as well. So, you know, character development, things of that nature, because the play was in development, you know, 4 years ago when I came on to it. So, and then having that collaborative nature also helps, especially when you're going into TV writing, because it's very collaborative. So I think they actually play really well off of each other. You know, one side always tends really well to the other side, and yeah, all experience is good experience.
Great. How did you find your voice and brand, Jess?
You know, living life, man. It just kind of, it really, I had to stop. I've worked a lot in corporate America, and I've worked a lot in marketing. So really what the mindset is just sitting with yourself for a while and trying to figure out what's important to you, what matters to you. And then almost making that into like a self-log line, you know, figuring out what that is and figuring out who you are in a log line, right? Like, but if you think of it in terms of brands and things that you actually consume, what is it about them that makes you actually like them? You know, besides the fact that they taste good or they look good, you know, there's other things about it. There's like commercials you see that pull at your heartstrings, that subliminal messaging. So it really just, it takes some time. You just got to sit and figure it out. You know, there's not really a right way to do it.
For anyone interested, we do work on that in the Pitch Prep program. We have a 2-week branding clinic taught by a really amazing teacher.
What? Brianna? What?
So all compliments are meant for me. Okay. Cool. So do you ever get stuck writing dialogue? And if you do, what are some things that help you to write good dialogue?
I do. And I'm laughing because he actually gets the brunt of my frustrations when I'm stuck on dialogue, because I'm the queen of self-deprecation. So, sorry, he just made that noise. Yeah, I yell at myself for a while. I feel the frustration. That's the other thing. I think it's really important as writers and as people to just feel your feelings. Because the sooner you feel and process your feelings, the sooner you can get away from them. And that's kind of been a big thing that's like helped me in my own writing, is like literally, if I think something shit, like I just have to sit in that for a second and be like, this is shit. And then I stop, calm down. I'm like, okay, why is this shit? And then I make it better. Like, and sometimes it takes, you know, moving forward and coming back to it later. Like sometimes it's like, oh, I've got to just finish this act, and then I'll take a pause, come back and write the act and make another pass at it and see if I can figure it out. And it usually falls into place. Yes. Amen.
I unmuted right as they started. Okay. How did you find the best team in the world? That question was for Keegan. No.
I know, his ears are burning. Yeah, so yeah, like I said earlier, I met him, you know, over coffee. And then as the time kind of went on, he kind of snuck Lauren in there, my other manager. We literally actually went to a winery, supposedly me just meeting Lauren, but apparently they had already been talking about her coming onto my team. So that was sneaky. Yeah, I think, you know, the thing about finding people who really believe in your work and people who really champion for you is what makes them the best team in the world, is because no matter what, at the end of the day, you know, you're still going to be able to be you, you know, you're still going to be able to keep what's important to you intact. You know that the notes you're going to get are for, you know, your best interest and still with you in mind and still with your brand in mind. So having that trust and obviously friendship, like he's hanging out right now, right? So obviously that trust, that friendship's really important to me because I'm Southern. So that really was, you know, really fortunate to have had that.
How many scripts did you have finished before you started getting signed or selling them?
I would say 4 before I got signed. I think together we've written 2. I think we're working on a couple now. I think we are working on a couple. I don't think I'm literally writing them. We are working on a couple. Yeah, I had four before I got signed. Two pilots, two features. Mm-hmm.
Great. She has two questions. It's the same. I was like, oh, I saw her question over here, but it's the same over here. Did you have spec scripts in your portfolio too when you were starting off? She only has pilots and features.
Yep. Nope. Everything's original in my portfolio, and I think that's kind of what's preferred nowadays. No one really, I don't think, is reading specs anymore. Valid? Fact. Confirmed.
Fact. Wow.
No one's reading specs. Write originals. Write badass originals, and make sure, like, again, this is part of knowing your brand. Like, if you know, like, oh, there's these shows I definitely want to write for, make sure you have something in your portfolio that's like in that vein.
Love that. It is a fun exercise to write a spec script should you have the time, just like your research and stuff. It's a fun exercise.
Absolutely.
It teaches you a lot about formatting and pacing, but you don't need it. Love that. When you're staffed on a show, how do notes work? Do you send your first draft to your manager, or is it just the show producers?
Yeah, no. When you're staffed, it's all in the room. Every room's different. I can only speak for my room. It's very collaborative. It's very, passing back and forth. We, as a room, really get things together, story-wise, and then, pair off and two people write the script. And once we kind of get in a good place, we send it to the showrunner. He gives us notes. Once that's all approved, it gets into the studio. They give us notes, and then eventually we get to a production draft. Eventually, one day, sometimes, most of the time.
Is your writing process different for the Flash versus your feature?
I'm actually really lucky because the way that Eric Wallace likes his outlines done is very similar to the way I outline. So I'm extremely lucky in that. So for me, no, it's not different. I'm really excited about it. There's some differences in the stages of things, kind of how much we do before we actually get to the outline. That's way different. That's been a really huge learning experience in a great way.
What do you mean? Like, talk about that process. Like, did you expect it? How have you learned?
Yeah, I knew it was going to be different because, people. But I think it's twofold. It's partially seeing kind of how things run in a room when it comes to having to think about production and already have to think about budget, all this stuff, but also being in a room with so many veterans, you really start to naturally think about story differently because the way you literally are just sitting in a room throwing spaghetti off the wall all day until you have an episode, which is great. But yeah, you hear those veterans and you really can't help but to get caught up in that energy and to really start to learn and to feed off of that. And I'm really fortunate because my room, everyone is so great and open, and it doesn't really matter like what level you're at. Like, everybody can contribute and everybody can, give ideas. It's encouraged, and they're all really supportive. So that's been really great because, there's a lot of, different opinions about how writers' rooms work because, again, it's different from room to room. So I didn't know what to expect. So again, I'm pretty sure like I'm going to be spoiled by the end of my time at the Flash.
And just logistic, what is the schedule like? Because I've heard different places have like grueling, crazy schedules. Some have sometimes have really sweet schedules.
It's technically a 10 to 6. That may shift a little bit with the pandemic when we come back from hiatus, just because it's a lot of time sitting in front of a computer all day. But in the actual room, it is 10 to 6. Obviously, when there are deadlines looming, days might be a little longer, might be some weekend work depending on, but it's kind of like any other like job, I guess, your normal 10 to 6 plus whatever you kind of need just to get shit done.
Andy asks, do you ever find that some of your characters reappear in other projects under different names, like repeat themes?
Yes, all the time. Pretty much. And then a lot of times it's really funny because sometimes like if a character didn't work out in a way in one project, they'll end up being like the lead in the next project. So I do it all the time. I try really hard. Again, I'm Southern. You eat all your food on your plate before you go to bed. So, no character is wasted. Just kind of, but yeah, I definitely see that happens quite often for me.
query letters? Natasha wants to know.
No, I didn't do query letters. I was just able to, have some generals. Obviously, once you get repped, it's way different. It is a lot of knocking on doors before that. So before that period, it's a lot of just networking, making those relationships, because your Rolodex is everything. Because, once you are, in it and able to win it, like, these are the people you're going to be calling and be like, hey, remember me? I have a thing that you might like. So relationships are everything, and networking is everything.
Do you have any plans to do any more directing in addition to?
Yes, I do. Yes, I really do. We're currently working on getting my first my director debut off the ground. Takes time, but yes. Short answer, yes.
I love that. You don't have to give the short answer, but if you want to give the short answer, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm really.
We have time.
Yeah, I'm really, we're working on, I'm extreme. I have to be organized again, just because if I'm not, the attention's everywhere. So we basically kind of work in almost like grids of like, these are the areas we're working in, and this is what we're doing in each area, or this is what's already out. So I'm always happy when we're like thinking or working on, one that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to direct this one day. Ha, ha, ha. So it's, the plans are in place, but it's a hurry up and wait industry. Maybe that's the hardest lesson I learned, because the wait part of the hurry up and wait is long. That was tough. The waiting sucks. Bad. But again, payoff's worth it.
So true. You get snaps again. Shanae's talking about how she's talking about specs. She's one of the specs. So some of the writing programs do ask for specs. She has 2 girls in a feature. I mean, a couple of them do. We actually interviewed the WB program. So if you check out our blog, we have an interview with them as to why they specifically like specs. So if you are writing them, it's just what you got to do.
And it makes sense. It makes sense for a writing program. Absolutely makes sense for a writing program. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you reach out to people who manage you now as a part of making the leap?
Yeah, actually, I sent a lot of very neurotic emails to Keegan, because we actually linked up before I moved. There was a lot of back and forth of like, I'm not leaving New York. I am leaving New York. I'm not. No, yeah, I am. And again, that support system was great. I'm lucky I have a couple of friends out here, and that also helps, when you come and visit. I will say that definitely visit beforehand, figure out what part of the city is your vibe. It's a huge city, right? Like, you can find any vibe you want in Los Angeles. So definitely come visit. You can find your vibe. Just figure out what that is. Find your tribe. Find your vibe, find your tribe. But yeah, I reached out to him, letting him know this is what I was thinking about, and he was giant help in that process. Mm-hmm.
Stafford says, thank you so much for clarifying how much work you finished. I've heard you should have 5 polished works. Some say 10. What do you think determines these numbers?
No idea. That's just how many I had finished. I work myself to the bone. I'm always working on, so even like now during this hiatus, I'm like on a 6-week hiatus for the Flash, I'm writing things. So instead of relaxing, I don't think anything really determines the number, because again, it's all subjective, right? One person, like the question said, one person might say 5, one person might say 10, one person might say, you have this one amazing script, sold. Like, so it really depends. Just do what you got to do.
How did you feel when you first entered the room? I'm assuming this is the staff room. Yeah. How long did it take before you felt comfortable enough to speak out and offer your ideas?
Yeah, again, like, I'm super fortunate with my room. These are probably the most amazing people that I've met thus far in this journey. Besides you, Brianna.
Thank you for clarifying. Very important. So important, everybody.
I was extremely nervous on that first day. Just because, again, like, eventually the main goal for me is features, right? So, stepping into this TV thing was very nerve-wracking. And actually, at the point that I stepped in was for a freelance episode, which was kind of, I guess, ended up being part of my interview process, essentially. So I personally, I think was a little more nervous because of that, because I definitely knew, these are people that I do want to like me, like my writing, like the way I work, like the way my brain works. So yeah, I think I was nervous, and the thing that really helped is the people. they were really open. Like literally the moment I got there, the two co-EPs like brought me into their office and they were like, listen, you know, and they have all these like crazy, they have like literally every single Marvel and DC figurine that you can think of. It's crazy, huge office, and it's a little overwhelming. But they were like, yeah, you should ask this, and here's all these things, and here's all this formatting stuff, and here's, you know, so it really helped because they wanted you to feel comfortable. But that's you know, my experience in that particular room.
Love that. So Kay's bringing this up, we touched on it, but how or if did roadmap play a role in your path to management and staffing?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helped with kind of the mindset of, you know, I need to come to Los Angeles. You know, being here, I can't stress enough how, and I know it was hard for me to hear when I lived in Arkansas, even when I lived in New York. But you gotta, as a writer, you kind of gotta go where the business is. And kind of knowing that, you know, after you meet so many execs and they're here, you know, you just know it's different when you can be there in person. So that's probably one of the biggest takeaways.
What do you find changes, if anything, about your writing when you're writing for actors already cast in a show rather than characters not cast yet?
That's a good question, because that was something my first drafts of my freelance episode had, I struggled with. That's where, you know, being able to kind of go back and watch the show if it's already on, right? Figure out what those mannerisms are, figure out what those speaking patterns are. I'd say that was probably the hardest part. Because again, I have a specific way that I write like characters, and these characters are already established. Like we just ended season 6 of The Flash. So that was pretty tough, but it just took a little extra work, reading through the scripts, watching the show, figuring out how these people talk. You just always think about characters as people, not actors. So think about the characters as people, and, you know, be like, okay, how does Barry Allen talk, rather than how would Greg Gustin say this, you know? So just do your due diligence, do your research. You'll be fine. We're writers. You'll be fine.
Do you foresee a shift in the use of virtual rooms?
I don't know. I mean, this pandemic, man, it's crazy. I mean, I could definitely see that. It wouldn't be the same, you know, me having been able to be in there physically versus now us being virtual. I wouldn't put past people to do it, just because of safety. But I don't know. I really don't know.
We don't know right now. It just keeps
I have no clue.
It is crazy. I believe you touched on this, but were you ever a writer's assistant, or were you just staffed as a writer?
No, I'm, again, extremely fortunate. That was a path I was thinking about before I got repped. But I have a couple of sharks on my team that just gung-ho, they'll get you in rooms. But it's something I thought about. I didn't personally, but, you know, definitely, even I'm thinking about a couple of the writers who are in that writer's room now. I think 2 of them started off as writing assistants, then they were script coordinators, and now they're staffed on the show. So again, no right way to do it.
Did you meet with EPs or anyone, showrunners, before getting staffed? Was that the meeting that you had?
Yeah, when I had the meetings, this process was fewfold. I got hit on all directions, met the couple of people at the CW, then I met with the showrunner, and I met with one of the higher up producers before I got the gig, and then had a few phone calls before I actually went to the physical room, because again, they were very much like, don't be nervous, these are all the things you should know, we're great people, you know. So it was great.
Once you're staffed on a show, are you exclusive to that show, or can you play in other sandboxes?
Yeah, I am actually exclusive to WB for my time at The Flash. I cannot work on anything episodic, but I can write features, and I can do other things. But I don't know if that's standard, but I'm definitely, it's standard. Yeah, so if you're writing on a show, you're pretty much going to be standard to that studio. Standard, exclusive, that's the word I wanted.
How do you find your own voice in the room, like knowing when to pitch and when to hold back?
Well, I was like Russian roulette. Even because it's one of those things, like, even though they're like, yeah, sure, speak up, like, should I? Because I think the other thing that made this room intimidating is because most of them have actually been in the room for at least 3 years. So they have a very tight knit bond. So what I actually did, so one of the guys, Jeff, who was at that time the staff writer, he's been promoted since then, but he was the staff writer. I made sure not to speak any more than he did. So I kind of took his cues and I spoke like, if he spoke, I was like, okay, I can get an idea in there, until I felt a little more comfortable. Now that I'm kind of more integrated, again, it really just doesn't matter. And like, again, even the showrunner, Eric, he'll talk to you one-on-one and he's like, be an idea machine. We need ideas. He talks just like that, by the way. And it's now it's more of a term of like, I have this idea, but there's not a space, because it's very fast paced, right? So it's like, I've got to find a space of silence, which is, again, it's easier to do in a physical room, but on Zoom, it's harder to like get it in there, because, you know, you might not get heard because of the virtual cutoffs or whatever, the audio. But yeah, at first I definitely took the cues from the people who were literally in my shoes.
Good idea. Have you ever had a disagreement with an actor about the way you were seen for the character, and how did you deal with that?
Nope, because the great thing about it is that is not our jobs. That is the showrunner's job. If there's an issue, it's not us. So that's really great. The pressure's off. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I like how you said it's pressure. I'm like, as an actor, I'm like, yeah, you don't want to deal with actor.
Yeah, but that's the other crazy thing, is that actually, you know, a few of them have like, well, when I was in the room, a few of them popped in. It was around Christmas, so a few of them popped in, and then they popped in the Zoom. Because the other thing to think about, you're the writer, guys. You're the one who has control over their story arc. They were brown nosing the hell out of us. So that's the other thing. I really don't think that's an issue. And then I think a lot of times it really, at that point, when it gets to a point where it's like they don't agree with something, you know, that's written, that's something they take up with the director.
Yeah. Yeah. Shanae's just saying you were super fortunate. She had a friend that did the PA, then writer's assistant route, and it seemed to take forever.
Yo, it all takes forever. Again, like it took me 10 years to get here. It all takes forever. It's a long, again, hurry up and wait. All you need is that one opportunity.
Jess, did you watch every episode of The Flash before your first day?
I have been watching The Flash since it started. So I've been on that. I'm on that train. I'm on that train. But if I had not, yes, I absolutely would have. I did rewatch a lot before my freelance episode. Because again, it's been on for a long time. So I wanted to like refresh. But if I had not, I would have absolutely squeezed in every single episode of that show that existed and gotten no sleep.
Did you, I mean, The Flash is one of the shows that you had talked about taking meetings. Did you take meetings at other places that, you know, you were interested in, or at least putting your hat in the ring?
Yeah, actually, again, because this is like something I really love, right? My managers got me a lot of meetings with shows like that. I had a few meetings at DC. With DC, had a, you know, meeting with one of the heads of the DC TV show property. So kind of like multiple shows in that case, you know, in one sitting. And then I talked to a few other just kind of production companies, and, you know, Universal and a lot of them, Array, a lot of them. I have like cards over here that I kind of keep when I'm like, Keegan, go talk to this person, please. Is that possible?
So how do you prep for meetings, and what's your follow-up process? Like you say you have cards, do you keep notes, or do you just kind of let your management team, or and how do you mentally prep? Are you like, okay, make sure early, all that?
Yeah. So I legitimately, like, once the meeting's done, I like to have it out of sight, out of mind, so I can decompress. So I will usually either call, you know, my managers, or I'll send them an email like, hey, this is how it went. And, you know, they'll always follow up. To mentally prepare, about 2 hours before about 2 hours before I need to leave my apartment, I play video games for a little bit. And then I have a playlist I listen to that make me feel powerful. Get myself in a good, you got this mood. Just knock off the cobwebs, do something unrelated to writing to, you know, relax my mind a little bit and to feel really relaxed and loosey-goosey and able to go in there as myself. But I think everybody should definitely have kind of a pre-game ritual, as we could call it. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds like woo woo when you say it, but it's so true. This is an industry of like energy and relationships. So you have to go in with the right energy and relationship.
Yeah. And I'm an introvert too. So I really have to kind of get myself ready.
Okay. Dig. I'm going to dig into that for a second. Will you talk? Because we have so many writers who are introverts and a lot of writers are, I get it. But I do feel like when you talk about the process of like needing to force yourself to be an extrovert, because you can't go into a room and like wait for them to ask questions, you know, like talk about like the shift between introverted you and introverted Jess and the Jess that needs to show up for like in the room and all that. I would love for you to delve into that a bit.
The trick to that is that there is no trick, there is no difference, because again, it is about you being you. Me, a big part of my introversion is quirks and weirdness. And things got better the more and more I stopped trying to hide that part of me. The more and more I would say weird things in a meeting or be like my awkward self, people were like, oh, this is like an individual, unique human being. I joke about, again, queen of self-deprecation. I talk about being an aggressive introvert in my meetings. Like I talk about those things because, you know, a lot of that goes into play with why we are writers and why we are building worlds that we don't want to walk into because people. There is no difference. Don't separate the two. Just be you. Now, my pregame ritual starts 2 hours before I have to leave because I do need to prep myself to have energy. And just do what you have to do. Some people have to drink coffee, or some people might want to go for a brisk walk to get themselves energized. Whatever you have to do, like let's say if you're an introvert and you know it takes I was about to say a word. It takes a freaking lot to go out to have a beer with your friends. Whatever you have to do to get yourself in the mood to socialize, do that before a meeting. Because it's the same thing. You just need to do whatever you have to do to have energy.
Love that. I feel like, and then do whatever you have to do. Like you mentioned, you decompress afterwards. Like that's really important to you. I think that's great. And that's like, I think another sign of an introvert is like, it never happened. Let me go sit by myself.
That's why I call them right after. Cause I don't want to talk to anybody for like 6 hours. Like just don't even speak to me.
Yeah. We just talk so much about, a lot of writers are introverts. And I think that they think that it holds them back from opportunities. And I just don't think like you've described a great way that it
makes you like, again, like people want to know you, and if you're introverted, that's a part of you.
Nate says, sorry if you already talked about this, but I don't think you did. I just looked it over. But did you get to be on set for your episode? And if so, will you talk about it? Was it a thrill? That's Nate's question.
So for
adding enthusiasm.
Yeah, so for me, it was a freelance episode, so I did not get to go. But I did, like me and that associate producer, Danny, we were both like huge musical fans. So we clicked real fast. She went on set for mine. So when she came back, she had a lot of set videos or whatever. Normally speaking, yes, I would get to go for my episode. You write an episode, you get to go to set. And it's set from what I'm hearing, because I'm still learning myself. It sounds like it's kind of more of like a script supervisor type situation when you go. You are working. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the time where things are safer and I'm able to go up to set, because I definitely will have that opportunity, and I can't wait.
So fun. Make believe in real life.
Make believe in real
life. What were some of the questions you asked Keegan that made you feel like you were the right fit for Echo Lake and they were for you?
Well, he proactively answered a lot of my questions, because he's really passionate about Echo Lake, and that's the first thing that really made me want to know more. If somebody's this passionate about, again, like the same thing with the whole, he's that passionate about it, you want to know why. And then for this personal relationship, it really was a lot of personality melding. We click a lot. He kind of speaks Jess, because I'm a lot sometimes. I'll admit that. But he's very much yin to the yang kind of a thing. You know, I'm really over the top and neurotic sometimes, and he's able to kind of like level me down. So a lot of it is that personality and that actually personal match to that person. Do they understand you? Do they understand your nuances? And then a big piece of it was, you know, does this person believe in what I want to do? And I think I was being courted by a couple of companies during that trip. And that was the difference for me, is a couple of the people I were talking to did feel a little more like well, this is what you should do in order to do it. And Keegan was more like, well, what do you want to do? Okay, this is what we could probably do to get you there. And that made a huge difference to me, someone actually caring about what I do and wanting to champion what I do. And that's a relationship that'll last, right? Because I know that person at the end of the day believes in what I believe in. Mm-hmm.
That's great. We have a few more minutes. I have one more question that I can think of, but I hold myself to maybe there might be more. And if people have questions, we have time, pop them in the Q&A. Jess, we talked about like your schedule. We talk about your writing process. Do you ever take pen to paper? Do you use note cards, whiteboard? At what point do you put it to the page? What's your editing process? We just talk a little about that.
Yeah, actually, before I go to outline, I have lots of note cards. Sorry, trees. I'm also very green, so I feel conflicted about having so many note cards because I don't like killing the environment. Yes, so I kind of jot down very high level thingies, like ideas and concepts, especially I have actually tiny notebooks scattered upstairs in my bedroom for those times that, you know, I'm just sitting, staring at my ceiling and get an idea and just write it down for the next day. But my actual writing process, I outline voraciously. I outline, I have a two-part outline. I have kind of a higher level outline that's just kind of like, here are the 3 acts and here are the like main beats. And then once I get that together, I actually do a scene by scene outline. So I actually do that before I even go pen to paper. I never defer from that process. I've never deferred from that because it works really well for me. Helps me get scripts out fast too.
And you do that on note cards?
No, I start off with just the scratch on note cards, but the actual outlines are on like just a Word document. Gotcha. I have like folders on my computer for each project. Yeah. Yeah,
cool. And just out of curiosity, Erica's asking about your outlining process, which you just talked about. But how do you outline your characters? Like, do you do that separately? Do they just sort of intuitively come, or what's the process for, like, you know, you got the scenes, but the people in them got to make it go somehow. Yeah. So
that's usually for me. Actually, it actually comes in like that detailed outline I was talking about. That high level outline is more about story and plot and theme. But that detailed outline, I actually literally it's like scene heading, just like it is in Final Draft, and then all the major beats in that scene, but it is more detail. It's like almost like you're telling a story about that scene. And that's where, for me, a lot of that and that's where I'm able to draw. And that's another reason I do it. It's able to organize, right? I'm able to drop in, and then I'm able to go back and read later and be like, ooh, this is really thin about this character. I need more about this character. And I'm able to actually physically drop it into the outline. So I do a lot of the character development in that like detailed outline process.
Cool. Nate has one more DC fanboy question. Besides the Flash, which DC character would you most want to write? I heard you mention Booster Gold earlier, which would be really cool to see.
You know, if it's still on, and if Flash is done by the time I'm done, I would love to write for Titans and love to write Wonder Girl. Because the way they have that character right now, if no one's watching Titans, it's on DC Universe. It's phenomenal. It's like Teen Titans, but for us as adults. It's real graphic. It's great. But that character is dope, and I would love to write from her. I mean, she was, you know, Diana Prince's basically mentee. I would love to write for that character.
I was writing it down. I was adding it to my list of things I need to watch.
It's amazing.
I'm trying to get through Community right now, and it's just so great, but it's also taking time. Okay, how much time does the show give you on outlines and drafts?
That varies from episode to episode, season to season. It really depends on the studio. Normally, I think on average, we get about 4-ish weeks per episode. Before the pandemic, it was a little quicker because I think the shutdown was imminent. And I think we had to get stuff out really fast within like 1 or 2 weeks, and that was exhausting. But I love my job. But yeah, usually we have some time, but it really does vary. It really depends on, you know, how close we are to the wire and what the production schedules are and all that stuff. I didn't think I had to think about, but we do have to think about it. So yeah.
You do have to think about it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Lana has a question. In theater, the process can be write it and then sell it with no involvement on the production side. To your knowledge, does this exist in the film world?
I mean, not in my experience. you know, it's so subjective. It's hard to kind of like answer that question definitively. For me, it's been a lot of reading and meetings than development. Like with the feature that the feature that we have out, there's a lot of back and forth with the producer, getting his notes and all that stuff. And I am very much involved, and I'm actually hoping to stay involved even when it is sold, you know, to kind of see if I can help the integrity of the product. Because, you know, once it gets to the studio, you know, who knows what changes they're going to make. But it really just depends on the project, on the studio, on the times, on what they want, or if they want to just buy it from you and let someone else rewrite it. Like, it really depends. Yeah.
Do you have a personal preference of like, this is why I love writing features versus, I'm not going to make you choose between them, but what do you love about either one, and what kind of draws you when you have a theme that you're working around? Like your pirate, are you like, this is going to be featured because I want to see this badass big, you know, cinematic or whatever? Like, what makes you think about that, and kind of what draws you to the different?
I think the reason I default to film is because of theater, you know, because it's something about getting that story out within a certain span of time, the whole story out within a certain span of time. But there have been times where it's like I've written something and it's just been a lot. And it's like, well, I guess this is a pilot, you know, because it really is about how much is there to tell, because you don't want to skimp on your story, right? So if it's more, then it's just going to have to be more. But I personally actually default to feature just because that's kind of like where I come from, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What are you watching right now?
What am I watching right now? I'm watching a lot of musicals today. That's been great. Just kind of.
What do you mean your musicals? What musicals are you watching?
Oh, I have like a Broadway HD subscription, literally watching musicals. Like literally watching Broadway musicals. Let's see, TV though. I'm rewatching some things. I'm rewatching Black Mirror, which is like my favorite show, which I know is weird in this time, but I am. I'm rewatching. Oh, I'm watching Penny Dreadful for the first time, which is wow. Like the writing in that show is just everything I aspire to be when I grow up. That's really good. I'm rewatching New Girl. I'm rewatching Parks and Rec. And then I'm getting ready to start kind of going through my list. So I'm going to watch The Great. I'm going to watch Little Fires Everywhere. Some of the stuff that's like out that I haven't really been able to watch because I've been so busy. I have a whole list.
Hard to balance that time because it takes time to watch it, but it's important. Okay, great. How long does it usually take you to write a feature film, and do you give yourself deadlines?
Ooh, that's a good question. It depends project to project. I do absolutely give myself deadlines. That's the answer to that part now. I have to, or I will not finish something. I have to give myself deadlines. But it really depends on how crazy excited. I'm excited about most features I write, but like if I'm really crazy excited about something, I will pump out a script fast. I think the pirate scripts, the first draft of it, I got out really fast, but it took us about 9 months to polish it. And then polish it and get it ready for taking it out to producers. The director debut, I probably popped that one out in a couple of months. And then there's one that I wrote, it's a space one that literally still like rewriting on it. So depends on the project for me and how like excited I am about it.
It's good. It's good. Yeah, those are basically all the questions. Do you have any last thoughts, any words of inspiration beyond what you've already said, which has been beautiful and inspiring? Thoughts for these emerging writers, of which you were one not long ago?
Yeah, I feel like I still am. So I don't know, keep going, don't stop. I had a mentor some years ago who told me something that literally changed my entire mind frame. It's, you know, you only lose when you quit. So literally don't stop, because the moment you stop, somebody else is just going to take your place. And you deserve to be there. So keep going. It's hard, but you can do it. There's so many resources out there. There's so many ways to break in. There's so many options of getting into the industry. Again, like I've written stage, I've done features. Like there's not a wrong way to do it. And that should be very heartening to you, because you're not limited. You're not limited to how you can break in. And at the end of the day, everybody needs content, and content comes from writers. So just keep going.
It's so good. It's so good. I was also going to follow you on Twitter.
Or the Instagram. It's both.
Or the gram.
It's the same on Instagram and Twitter. It's Jess Carson.
Follow her.
Do it.
Jess, namaste. The light in me sees the light in you. Thank you so much for this. This was really great.
Yeah, I'm happy to see your face. Maybe get like a virtual drink one day.
Okay. I mean, I can't drink right now, but also we can't meet up, so why not just make it a LaCroix? You don't know.
Drink water, and I can drink beer for the both of us.
Oh, please do. I miss it so much. Okay, good. Great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Sunday.
All right.
Bye.
Talk soon. Bye.